Alright, Chapter 12, The Power of Precision. Human language is like a cracked kettle on which we beat our tunes to bear, to dance, to when all times we are longing to make move stars to pity. Gustav Goldberg. Think of it. Think of the time when you heard the words and words seemed like magic. Maybe it was a public event like Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Won't Have a Dream" speech. Maybe it was the word of your father or mother or a special teacher. We can all remember the moments when someone spoke with such force, precision, resonance that the words stayed with us forever. Words are the most powerful drug used as mankind. Rudyard Kipling, one of us, said. We can all think of the times when when words didn't seem to have magical intoxicating qualities. When John Grinder and Richard Bandler studied successful people, they found that common attribute to one of the most important precise communication skills of the manager have the managing information to be successful. Bandler and Grinder found that the most successful managers seem to have a genius for getting in the heart of the information rapidly and communicating to others what they had learned. They tended to use the key phrase of the word convey with the most important idea with a great precision. They also understand that they did not need to know everything and to distinguish between what they needed to know and what they didn't need to know, and focus on the former. Bandler, Grinder observed the outstanding therapists like Virginia Satir, Fritz Perls, Dr. Milton Erickson used some of the same phrases many times, and enabled them to get immediate results with patients in 1 or 2 sessions instead of 1 or 2 years. There's nothing surprising with the Bandler and Grinder found. Remember, we've learned the map is not territory. It's not the territory for the words of the describe the experience of aren't the experience. They're just the best verbal representation we can come up with as those standards. The reason one of the measure for the success for the accurately, precisely our words convey with what we want. How closely our map can approximate with the territory just as well. We remember the times the words moved with us like magic. We also remember the times when the communication was utterly hopeless and wary. Maybe we thought that we saying one thing and the other person got the opposite message. Just as precise language has the ability to move people in useful direction, slop language in the most direct. If this corrupts language can also be corrupt. That wrote George Orwell in 1984 is based on the principle. In this chapter, we're going to learn about tools will help with communicating with a precision and effectiveness than they may have ever had before. We're going to learn how to guide others toward the same outcome. And the simple verbal with the tools that any of us can cut through the verbal fluff, the distortion most of us caught up in. Words can be walls, but they can also be bridges. It's important to use the words to link people rather than divide them. In my seminars, I tell people that I'm going to show you how to get it whatever you want. In fact, I tell them just right at the top of the piece of the paper how to get up what I want. After I go through the big long build up, I give them the miracle formula how to get whatever you want. Ask, and I said end of the lecture, and I'm kidding. No, when I say ask, I don't mean whine, beg, complain, or plead, or grovel. I don't mean accept the handout of the free lunch or art of charity, or an act of charity. I don't mean expect someone else to do your work for you. What I mean is to learn with intelligently, precisely, learn to ask in a way that helps to both define and achieve your outcome. In later chapters, you begin to learn in this later chapter, begin to learn with the formulated specific outcomes and activities we wanted to pursue. And I need some specific verbal tools, 5 guidelines, asking intelligently, precisely. 1. Ask specifically. You must describe whatever you want, both yourself and someone else, how and how far, how much, when and where, where, how, and with whom. And if your business needs a loan, you'll get it if you know how to ask. Ask if you get it. And if you say you need some money to expand a new product line, please lend us some. We'll need to define precisely what you need, why you need it, and when you needed it. You need to be able to show that you'll be able to produce it, and with it. Our calling seminars, people that always say that they want more money. I hand them a couple of quarters, ask them they run to see, but they didn't ask intelligently, so they didn't get what they wanted. 2. Ask someone who can help you. It's not enough to ask specifically. You must specify specifically of someone who has resource, knowledge, capital, incentive, or the business experience. Let's say having trouble with your spouse, the relationship is falling apart. You pour out of your heart. You're specifically honest and humanly possible. But if you seek and help someone with whose pitiful relationship as you do will succeed, of course not. Finding the right person to bring to ask brings us back to the importance of learning how to notice what works. Anything you want, better relationship, better job, smarter program, investing your money, something someone already has, something someone already does. The trick is to find out with the people to figure out what they do right. Many of us gravitate toward barren wisdom, find synthetic ear, and accept the translate to results. It won't unless the sympathy is matched with expertise and knowledge. 3. Create value with the person you're asking. Don't just ask, expect someone to give you something. Figure out how you can help them first. If you had a business idea and need money to pull it off, one way to do this, find someone who can both help and benefit. Show him how our idea can make money for you and for him. Creating value does not always have to be tangible. The value comes with great money only by the feeling sensibly or a dream, but often that's enough. If you came up with it and said I needed $10,000, I'd probably say so. To a lot of other people, I said, if you said you needed the money to make a difference in people's lives, I might begin to listen. Specifically showed me how you wanted to help others and create a value for them, themselves, and yourself. I might see how you're helping and could create a value as well. 4. Ask and focus congruent belief. The surest way to ensure the failure of the convey ambulance for the aren't conceived about what we're asking, how anyone else can be. When you ask, do not absolutely conviction express those in your words or physiology. Be able to show that you're sure of what we want. You'll show that you'll succeed. You're sure you will create value, not just for you, but the person that you're asking as well. Sometimes people do all 4 perfectly, and they ask specifically, and they ask someone who can help them. They create a value for the person they're asking. They ask congruently. That even after they don't get what they want, their reason is they didn't do the 5th thing. They didn't ask until the 5th and the most important part of asking intelligently. 5. Ask until you get what you want. That doesn't mean ask the same person. Doesn't mean asking precisely the same way. Remember, the ultimate success formula says you need to develop sensory acuity to knowing what you're getting, and you have to have personal flexibility to change. So when you ask, you have to have change adjust until you receive what you want. You stay with the lives of successful people you find over and over again that they kept asking, kept trying, kept changing because they knew sooner or later they would find someone who could be satisfied with their needs. What the hardest part about the formula is many people in part with the asking specifically, we don't live in a culture puts great premium on precise communication. Maybe one of our biggest cultural failings, language reflects the society needs. Eskimo, several dozen words for snow. Why? Because they effectively, and to be an effective Eskimo, you have to be able to make the find distinctions between different kinds of snow. There's snow you can fall through, snow you can go blind, and build an igloo out of. Snow you may run a dog, and snow you can eat. Snow that is ready to melt. And I'm from California and particularly never seen snow, so the only word I have is not for me. Many phrases of the words you, the people, the culture, the Lord knows specific meaning. I have called these generalized nonsense-based words fluff. They're not descriptive language. They're more like vague guesses of the fluff. It's more like so with a depressor. Mary looks tired. Of course, even it's worse. Mary's depressed or Mary's tired. Specific language is Mary is a 32-year-old woman who has blue eyes, brown hair, sitting to my right. She's leaning back in her chair, drinking with a Diet Coke with the eyes focused on her breathing shallow, with the difference between giving an accurate description, external verifiable experience, and making a guess about what no one can see. The speaker has no idea what's going on. In Mary's mind, he's taking his map and assuming that he knows what her experience is. There's no expedient to which a man will not go to avoid real labor of thinking. Thomas Edison. Make assumption that it is a mark of a lazy communicator. One of the most dangerous things that you can do is dealing with others. Good example, the 3 Mile Island. According to the report of the New York Times, many of the problems that led to the accident shutdown of the nuclear plant had already been outlined in staff memorandums. As the company offers later admitted, but they also assumed someone else was dealing with the matter. Instead of talking direct steps to ask for the specifically what was being done, they assumed someone somewhere was taking care of things. The result was one of the worst nuclear accidents in American history. Much of the language, nothing more than wild generalization assumption for that sort of the lazy language can suck the guts out of the real communication. If you people tell you with precision, specifically is bothering them, if you can find out what they want instead, you can deal with it. If you use vague phrases of generalization, you just lob the mental fog, and the effective communication break out through the fog to become fluff buster. There are countless ways to sabotage real communication by even the lazy or over generalized language. If you want to communicate effectively, you have to be attuned to the fluff when it pops up and know that ask a question gain specifically purpose of language patterns to find out with as much of the useful information as possible. The closer you are to getting the full representation of the person's internal experience, the more you can affect change. One way to deal with the verbal fluff is a precision model. It must be pictured on the two hands that take a few minutes. Precision model. On the left hand, all, every, never, what would happen if, did, what causes us to prevent, how specifically, who, and what specifically compared to what. On the right hand, universal, pinky finger, ring finger, should, shouldn't, must, can't, five, verb, middle finger verbs, index nouns, thumb, too much, too many, too expensive. To memorize with the diagram, take your hands one at a time, move them up and left of the eyes so that your eyes are in position. Best visualize and store this information. Look at your fingers at one time, say the words over and over again, and then go to the next finger to the next until you've memorized one hand. Then do so with the other. Repeat the process with all fingers looking at the phrase, fixing them clearly in minded. When you've done this, see that you can look at a finger and immediately think of the word or phrase at the end of it. Working on a memorizing chart until the association is automatic. Now that you've have those words and phrases installed in your mind, here's what they mean. Precision modeling is a guide to overcoming some of the most common pitfalls of the language. It may map some of the most precision wrong turns that people often take. The idea is notice when they have pop up the redirect, but the most specific direction provides you with the means of quality. People, the distortion and deletion, the generalization will still be maintaining a raptor report with them. Let's start with the pinkies. On the right hand, you should have the word universal. On the left hand, words all, ever, and never. Universal are fine when they are true. If you say with this, every person needs oxygen, all teachers in the Sun School have graduated from college just to convey the facts. But most of us universally soaring in the fluff of the zone. We say a bunch of noisy kids on the street, and you could say kids today have no manners. One of these employees mess up and say, I don't know why I pay these bills, I never work. In both cases, for as much of the time we use universal, we've gone from the limited truth to the general untruth. Maybe those kids were noisy, but not all the kinds are ill-mannered. Maybe a particular employee seems incompetent, but not all. So for the next time a generalization like this, simply with a precision model, repeat the statement, emphasizing the universal qualifier. All cards are ill-mannered. Ask yourself all. Well, I guess not just to these particular kids. Your employees never work. Your question, never? Well, I guess not true for the one guy that's sure screwed up, but I can't say with the truth for the rest of them. Now bring the next two fingers together, examine them respectively. Words like should, shouldn't, and must, and can't, and someone tell you can have. He can't do something with a signal sending to the brain and limiting one of them to make sure that in fact they can't do it. But if you ask that you can't do something, whatever they have the something they don't want to do, they usually have no shortage of the answers. They want to break the cycle to say what happened if they were able to do that. Asking creates possibility that previously unaware of and gets them to consider the positive and negative byproducts of the activity. The same process works for the internal dialogue. When you say to yourself that I can't do that thing, with the next ask yourself what could happen if I could. The reply would be list positive and enable action feelings it would create with a new representation, possibility with a new state, with a new action, potentially new results. Just asking yourself the question will begin to change your physiology and your thinking of it, make it more possible. In addition, you could ask what prevents me from doing this now, thereby able to clear out what explicitly needed change. Now go to your middle fingers and stand with the verbs in the house. Specifically, remember the brain needs clear signals, operate with efficiently fluffy language and fluffy thought. Dissolve the brain. If someone said that I feel depressed, he's just describing the stuck state, but not telling anything specific. He's not giving any information that you can work with and in a positive way. Break with the stuck state by breathing through the fluff. If someone says he's depressed, you need to ask him how specifically he depressed it. what especially is causing him to feel that way. When you get to go to get him, be more specific. You often most move with one part of the position model to another. So if you ask the person to be more specific, he may say, "I'm depressed because I always mess up on the job." But the next question, even the virtual truth, is not likely. So would he ask you to always mess up on your job? Most likely the answer will be, well, no, not always. I guess making through the fluff of getting specifics. You're on the road of identifying with the real problem, dealing with what usually happens if the person has messed up in some small way, but made it symbolize with a big failing that exists only in his mind. Now put the index fingers together, the one representative of the noun specifically, whenever the nouns, people, places, and things, generalized statement that responding phrases include who, what, who, and what, and specifically and precisely what that you did with the verbs going from unspecified fluff of the real world. You can work with a generalized cloud that only exists in someone's head. You can't deal with the real world. Unspecified nouns are one of the worst kind of fluff. I have often heard someone say that they don't understand me or that they're not going to give them a fair chance. Just why specifically are they? If it's a big organization, probably one with the person going to make the decision. So instead of getting yourself stuck in the vague realm, what they don't understand, you need to find a way to deal with the real world person making the real world decisions using unspecified nameless. They can be the worst sort of the worst sort of cop out. They don't know why they are feel helpless, unable to change for their situation, but they focus specifically, and you can regain control. If someone says your plan just won't work, you need to find out specifically what they have the problem with the habitual, like yes, it will work, will maintain the rapture and resolve the situation. Often it's not the whole plan in small part, but other to try and re-engage in the whole plan. You'll like a plane flying without radar. You might fix everything but one thing, and of the problem swiftly with the problem is deal with it. Your road to bring you out of the valuable change. Remember, the closer the back approximately with the real territory, the more valuable it is. The more you have to discover what the territory is made with the power that you have to change. Now press the thumbs together. The last part of the previous decision mile. One thumb says too much, too many, too expensive. The other says compared to what. When you say too much, many, too expensive, you're using another form of deletion, often based on the arbitrary construct that lodged somewhere inside our brain. You might say that more than a week's vacation is too much time away from the work. You might find that your kids request it for a $299 home computer to be too expensive. You can step outside generalization, making the comparison 2 weeks away from the job may be worth it. You come back totally relaxed, able to do your best homework. Computer may be too expensive. If you don't think it will do any good, you think of the variable learning tool. It would be only worth many thousands of dollars down the line. The only way to make those judgment rationally is to have the valid point comparison. You'll find that when you're starting using precision math, you'll end up using naturally. For example, occasionally someone tells me your seminar is too expensive. When I respond, compared to what? He might say, well, compared to other seminars I've gone to. Then I find out specific seminars are referring to and ask about one of them, and he specifically is like the seminar like mine. Well, yeah. Well, it isn't. Interesting what could happen if I felt my seminar was real. What could happen if I felt my seminars were really worth time and money? His breathing pattern changes. He smiles and says, I don't know, I feel good, I guess. Specifically, could I have the help you feel good the way about my seminar now? Well, if it would spend more time on such a subject, probably would feel good about it. Alright, if I were to spend more time on the subject, what would feel for the seminar worth the time and money? He nods in agreement about happening in the conversation. We found with the real world, specific points that needed to deal with. We found with going for the string of generalization to a string of specifics. Once we got the specifically, we were able to deal with them in the way to solve our problems, and in the way with almost any sort of communication road is agreement that would behave within the specific information. During the next several days, begin to focus on language of other people. You begin to identify the things in universal, unspecified verbs, and now with how they change these. Turn on your television, watch an interview program to identify the fluff being used. To ask a question on the TV set, or to be able to give it specifically if you need specific information you need. Here are some of the additional patterns to listen for. Avoid words like good, bad, better, worse. Words that indicate some of the evaluation or judgment. When you hear phrases like the bad idea, it's a good that eat everything on your plate, you can respond with according to whom and how do you know what. Sometimes people will make statements like cause and effect. I might say that his comments made me mad, your observation made me think. Now when you hear those, you'll know how to ask and specifically does X cause Y. you'll become a better communicator and a better modeler. Another thing to be wary of the verbal mind reading when someone, I just know he loves me, or you think I don't believe you. You need to ask, how do you know that? Later patterns to learn a little bit more subtle, which is a wonderful reason to give the intention of the words, like attention statement, the reason with having come in common with our nouns, yes, but we can't find in the external world have seen any of seen an intention is not a person, place, or thing that because actually even the verbal describing process of sending normal nominalizations or words that have lesser specificity when hearing one you won't turn into it in a back process, which gives you the power to redirect and change experience. If someone, I want to change my life, or change my experience with the way the directors say, what do you want to experience? If they say, I want to love, you would respond to it, how do you want to be loved, and what is to be loving? If there's a difference specificity in the two forms, there sure is. The other way of the direct communication, asking them the right question, the outcome frame, if someone's bothering you, him or what's wrong, we'll get a long discussion on just that. And if you ask what do you want or how do you want to change things, you redirect the conversation from the problem to the solution and situation. No matter how dismal the desired outcome to be achieved, the goal should be changing the direction toward outcome away from the problem. During asking the right question, there are a number of them in the neuro-linguistic program that are referred to as outcoming questions. What do I want? What is my objective? Where am I? Why am I here? What am I doing for you? What are you doing for me? Here's another important frame. Choose how questions and why questions. The why questions can get you reasons, explanations, justification, excuses, but they usually don't come up with useful information. Don't ask your kid as he's having trouble with his algebra. Ask him what he needs to be performed better. If they need to know, if they ask the employee what did not contract you, we're biting for. Ask him how to change issue certain to go to the next one. Good communicators are interested in rationalization of something is going wrong. They want to find out how to do it right, and the right question will lead you in that direction. Let me show you the final point that goes back with the enabling beliefs that we examined in Chapter 5 of the 7 Lies of Success. All your communication with others, with yourself, should stem from the principle everything happens for the purpose. You can either serve what your outcomes mean, but your communication still should reflect feedback, no failure. Putting together a jigsaw puzzle with a piece that doesn't fit, but you don't usually act with a failure. If you stop walking on the puzzle, you talk with the feedback, trying another piece that looks more promising. It's your advantage to use the same general rule of the communication. There's a specific question, precise phrase for the transform almost any problem in communication found with the general principle we'll consider here. You'll be able to find in every situation, starting with the precision model now. In the next chapter, we're going to look at the underpinning of all success, human interaction, the glue that bonds people together. It's called the magic rapport. Chapter 13, the friend who understands you, creates you. Remain Roland.